We have Erica Montiavaro here for our annual Rules Ed. Most of the folks in the room know Erica because you guys have been on staff before. For those who haven't met Erica, she is the Senior Associate Commissioner in the Big West Conference and handles all things compliance and much more. And she doesn't get to do, she has brought this upon herself. She does a traveling road show every spring.
That was a mistake I made 17 years ago.
Yeah.
I regret every day, right? Yeah.
Carolyn remembers last year, I said how it was legendary during training sessions. She comes through and talks about new legislation, most of which will be effective August 1, and then we'll pepper you with lots of emails afterwards and newsletters trying to remind you of all the rules changes, which some will read, some will not. We joked at Coach the other day, asked me about a rule that went into effect, and I'm like, yep, that's been in effect for a little while, so we will continue to do our best to try to push out. There's a lot of rules changes. But the big one today that Erica's going to talk about is the time management legislation, and I'm not going to steal the show. She's got a lot to explain and where it comes from, how it's going to impact us in our Big West sports and potentially in the non-Big West sports who are in the room, so be gymnastics and swimming and diving, because we have the option to opt in to this legislation and out the non-Big West sports, so we'll talk through that too.
Thanks, Catherine. So you'll notice, those of you who've been around for a while, we usually have done this in the big room with all the sports in the same room. We feel like it's better to do these in these kind of smaller meetings because your world's very different than basketball and footballs. And so I feel like these smaller meetings have been much more productive in terms of getting questions asked and answered and dealing with the different nuances of the different sports. So as Catherine noted, this is the time management legislation that was adopted by the Autonomy 5 or Power 5, depending on your preference. Conferences back in January. This came as a direct result of student athletes from both the national staff and student athletes within that conference kind of standing up in front of the microphone and saying, we need some time demands proposals. We need a package from you. We want to see it next January. Be prepared to vote on it. And the result was this package that again was adopted back in January. The Big West Conference, the presidents and chancellors have determined that the conference sports, conference institutions will be opting in on the legislation going forward. So we are all in, and as I've said, you guys are my 6th campus. That certainly is better than you being told you have to opt in and the rest of the conference getting to make that choice. But we are all in as a conference, and senior staff's meeting later to kind of discuss the impact on all the other sports. We want to hear from you every little concern you possibly have. This is new, it's big, we're trying to figure out what all the pain points are. Everyone nationally is trying to figure this out. That sometimes, a lot of times when we pass legislation in the next 4 years, we correct the legislation, the unintended consequences. So we want to hear every single possible little problem you have. Maybe we can deal with interpretively, deal with it on the legislative front, and just kind of work through all of the issues. So when you look at legislation, it falls into 2 categories. The first category is time off for student athletes. And so that is significant time off and away from all athletically related activities, not just the practice and competition. Obviously in individual sports, there's still a lot of grace with voluntary and safety exceptions. So we're talking about that as the meeting was getting started. Those aren't changing. So I just want to ease everybody's fears right now. Those are not being touched. Voluntary safety, as it exists today, that's how it's going to exist in the fall. But there is more kind of restrictions on those other activities, defining those required athletically related activities, and making sure we're tracking and monitoring those appropriately. The second piece is more of the administrative burden, and can be a really big deal depending on how organized your sport is, and how often you've been communicating with student athletes regarding their schedule. This is notice to student athletes of their schedule of both the countable athletically related activities and now these required athletically related activities. And in addition, adequate notice for changing those schedules. So that's really more of the calendar, the communication piece that really is an administrative burden, more so. The full package of proposals starts with a prohibition on athletically related activities for an 8-hour period every night between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. So if you start to do the math, you'll realize that's a 9-hour window. You just have to give them 8 off. So if you're going at 5 a.m., You can do so, you just have to be done by 9 p.m. to get them that 8 hours in that window. Additional days off throughout the academic year. So in addition to our current rules regarding days off, there are now additional days off that will need to be built into the calendar and provided to the student athletes. Time management plan, that's the calendar piece and the adequate notice. Days off during preseason and vacation periods. So right now we've said you don't have to provide a day off in the preseason or during a vacation period until, now we're saying you must provide a day off in every week.
The additional days off, is that going to affect, what is it, 144 days or whatever it is?
No. So
Does it extend it?
it doesn't. We're not changing the way you calculate your season. So it's not impacting any of your start dates, your end dates, kind of the calculating. The 14 are in addition, and so they either have to come when you're in your 20-hour, which is counting towards your 144, or else they have to come during your 8-hour when school's in session.
Okay.
So you kind of have that flexibility throughout the year.
But we do lose the days.
You lose the days.
You may lose some days if you're taking them during the 20 hours. So if you're taking them all in the 20-hour, yes. If you're taking them in the 8-hour, no, you're not losing days
But
if you're
on the vacation period, there's no.
So
On the vacation period, right, there's not a 20-hour.
there's still not going to be a 20-hour.
Right,
Yeah.
but you lose that, so those days you lose.
You lose the day. Yeah, in the preseason, yes. But the 14 additional throughout the academic year, it depends on where you take them. If you're losing them from your designated playing
So
practices
whatever you
or
do,
not.
we'll lose 3 days.
So, but you may already have lost those. If you look at your calendar, Catherine said that they pulled kind of your CARA logs. But many of you, when you look at it, you're giving a lot of these days in other places already.
Yeah, and I think like in your sport, you guys probably are still doing safety exception or voluntary workouts.
Not in
potentially.
preseason.
Not during
vacation.
preseason and winter training.
Vacation,
Yeah.
so those
Yeah.
3 weeks we would lose 3 days.
3 days.
Well, unless it's our time off that we give them, and those are our days off. Unless is it mandated during
It has to be
a
7.
particular week,
Yeah,
Nope.
No, you get 14
wherever.
wherever.
Okay, so we get some 7 days off.
but you can't go 7 days in a row in preseason without a day off.
So.
Correct.
Correct, so
Two
that way,
different-
when we have 2 weeks and 2 weeks, we will have to take, they'll
The
have a day off.
longest, we're jumping ahead here a little bit, but the longest you can go then is 12 days, right? Day
Correct.
off, 6 on, day off.
Correct.
Okay.
And you may change how you define your week based on where your issues may be. So maybe you've always defined your week as, Sunday to Saturday, but you may change that depending on what works best within your program going forward. And you may change that on a term-by-term basis when you're looking at some of these nuances. But we'll get there.
Wait, what do we do now with those 3 days?
So the thing that we really want to stress when we talk about voluntary and countable, those aren't changing. So what exists is countable athletically related activities today. What exists is voluntary athletically related activities today. That's not changing. So it counts towards 20 hours. What counts towards 8 hours, that's not changing whatsoever. What is changing is we have this new definition of the required athletically related activities. So these are all the other things that the student athletes are asked to do that they want to have time away from. So it's compliance meetings, organized team promotional activities. So worse, yeah, those weekly compliance meetings are making them sick. They were just the worst, right? Organized team promotional activities, recruiting activities, and most specifically, student host activities. Media activities, fundraising events, so any team fundraising activities that you're doing that student athletes are involved in, that's now on this list of required athletically related activities. Community service, team building, and travel. So this is our new definition of those required activities, yeah.
So all these things, you can't do them on a day off now.
Right. With exceptions, and we're going to get into the exceptions, this chart does a nice job as we walk through the different things of talking about which exceptions apply when and where. And so again, we haven't touched voluntary, very important for many of you in the room. So CARA is RARA, right? So countable athletically related activities are required athletically related activities. But all required athletically related activities are not necessarily countable activities. I'm going to say that a lot, and I still may get asked the question, but what counts today is the only thing we're counting next year as well. When you look at the little para is part of the bigger RECA, for the required athletically related activities. So that 8-hour window every night. So we talk about the 8 continuous hours that must be provided off on a nightly basis between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. We have exceptions. Again, if you look at this, the first column outlines the exceptions in that overnight period. And you'll notice it's the longest of the columns. There are more exceptions to the 8-hour window than anything else. These first 3 are always an exception. Health and medical can occur anytime, anywhere, no matter what. So that can be seeing the trainer, doctor's appointments, drug testing, meals. Any of those health and medical activities can occur at any time. So they can occur during that 8-hour window. Academic, any academic activities, obviously, student in front of the student athlete, those can occur at any time as well. And then those voluntary athletically related activities. So if they're choosing, right, to engage in the sport, that's okay. It can happen even during that 8-hour window because that's voluntary athletically related activities. Student host activities are an exception. We're not going to make the student athlete leave the prospect at the curb at 9 p.m., right, so they can get their 8 hours off overnight. So they can continue if the prospect staying with the student athlete on the visit, that's completely permissible during that 8-hour period. During entertainment, whatever the case may be, those student host activities overnight are an exception. Life skills and team building, that can occur in that overnight window. Promotional practice activities, if you have any kind of open practices late at night, Midnight Madness in basketball, that's permissible in that window as well. Another exception, multi-day events. So you're at a swim meet, you're at a golf tournament, you're at a gymnastics meet, you're going day, 3 days in a row. You do not have to get the 8 hours off overnight. You're in it because you're not in control. You don't know what time you're getting back to the hotel, what time you've got to leave in the morning. So you're not required to do those 8 hours off during that time period. Home competition, probably not an issue in this room, but saying the 8 hours begins once the competition's done. So for example, when we're talking to baseball and they get done at 11 p.m., the 8 hours begins once the student athletes have been released from their athletics obligations. So if they leave at 11, they can't make them come back until 8 a.m. It's that 8? It should be 7 a.m. Yeah, it's too bad now. I'm a gaucho, you know?
Sorry.
Can't do math. That 8-hour window is upon release from the athletics activities. Another exception is always on the road, night before competition is an exception to the 8-hour window as well. So you're traveling to an event, you get there, you want to meet with the team doing these required athletically related activities. The night before competition on the road is always an exception as well. And then travel home. So if you're getting home later, right? So you get home at 11 p.m. I'm going to do the math right this time. You get home at 11 p.m. The 8 hours starts when you release the student athletes. So you can't bring them back for required athletically related activities until 7 a.m. the next morning. Concerns with this space? Yeah.
My concern, I guess, is you just log with the time now, that you're done with everything, and if you travel back from Berkeley and you get here at 10:30, and we just say, okay, release at 10:30, we're picking them up at 6. It's a multi-day event.
You don't have to for the multi-day event.
So you don't have to worry about anything for the multi-day
Nope.
event.
So I mean, that for most of you, you're going to be okay, right?
What about when you travel to San Jose day up and come back the same day?
And you're going back the next day?
No. But you have to log in the whole travel day?
No. No.
How are you going to log all this stuff?
Yeah.
So jump forward, and it's like cloak of secrecy, and we've seen like snippets of it because nobody wants to share their technology and how they're doing this. There's certain platforms out there. TeamWorks is a big communication platform. A lot of Power 5 schools are using. They built an engine it's basically like a Google Calendar, where you'll plug in things, and probably when you got back from that trip, you would go in and just make sure if you know roughly when you're going to, say, San Jose for a meet, that you're departing campus at 4 and you're gonna return roughly at 11, you probably, again, we haven't seen it, so we don't know what it looks like yet. You would plug that into your time management calendar, and we would just see that then, okay, the next day, when do they go in to start a required lift or a team meeting or practice? Did they get that continuous recovery? So there will be, and I'm jumping ahead in Erica's presentation, there will be some more administrative burden to tracking all this. We can't really tell you what it's gonna look like yet, because we haven't seen it. Like, we haven't seen how they're trying to create it in their technology for us.
And those are going to be the exceptions, right? And depending on your sport, when you're taking your day off as well. So if you're getting back from San Jose and the next day is your day off, that's pretty easy and obvious, right? We're not worrying about that 8-hour window. It's only those few times where we're getting back, we've pushed our 8 hours and we want them to come back at a particular time, that we're going to need to just kind of monitor that and track that appropriately. So you get back from Berkeley, are you going the next day or no?
Well, if we go to Stanford in a different contest, that's not a multi-day contest, right?
You can always start travel to the next site within that 8-hour window as well. So you get home, you're turning around, you're leaving again, that can begin in that 8-hour window as well. I think it was Dan yesterday who said there's so many exceptions to this that this isn't as big of an issue. That's the administrative burden. Yeah. So that's the second piece of it all, right? So we still have our weekly days off, right? So now we've moved out of our nightly overnight period. When we get into our weekly days off, so right now 1 day off per week once we're going in the 20 hours, 2 days off when we're out of season in that 8-hour segment. The only difference is now we're including the preseason and all of those institutional vacation periods to provide that day off during that point in time as well. I think probably the bigger issue, the bigger change is this, that we're now saying on a day off, no required athletically related activities can occur.
So compliance meetings on your day off.
Correct. Those terrible compliance meetings that we were having mid-season all the time, right? Can't do those. So when you go and look at the list, right, so there's that list. So now none of these activities, and we'll get to the exceptions, there are exceptions, but these activities are precluded on the day off. If you look at, or try to look at, the little six-point font, right? This is a list of about 65 activities that encompasses most of what we ask our student athletes to do. And it divides it into the different columns. So it gives you the category, is it academic, is it para, is it rara, is it voluntary? Can it be voluntary? Does it have to be included on the time management plans of the calendar, or is it allowed on the day off? So this last column, when you see it on your computer and you can read it properly, right, will indicate which activities are okay on the day off and which activities are not okay on the day off.
Yeah. So you know when we each individual day